I placed the last photo album into my suitcase and zipped it shut. The sound echoed through my bedroom, the same room where my husband Thomas and I had spent 35 years of marriage, where I'd nursed him through his final illness 3 years ago, where I'd cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count after he was gone. My hands trembled as I lifted the suitcase off the bed. Through the window, I could see Madison's white Range Rover parked in my driveway. Not a guest parking spot. My driveway. To my house. The house Thomas and I had bought when James was just 2 years old. "Mom?" James's voice came from downstairs. "Madison wants to know if you've cleared out the master bathroom yet. She's got the contractors coming tomorrow." I didn't answer. I was 63 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was about to become homeless. Not because I couldn't afford my own home, but because I'd made the mistake of believing that family meant something. The thing is, I'd actually liked Madison when they first started dating. She was 28 to James's 33, energetic and full of life. She called me Mama Ruth from day one, hugged me tight, told me she'd always wanted a mother-in-law who could be like a real mom. Her own mother had passed when she was young. I saw myself in her grief, recognized that ache of maternal loss. What I didn't see was how quickly Mama Ruth would become just Ruth, and then just an obstacle. It started small. 6 months after their wedding, Madison asked if she could just redecorate the living room a tiny bit. "Nothing major," she assured me. "Just some throw pillows, maybe a new coffee table." I said yes, because that's what you do. You make space for the new generation. You welcome them in. The throw pillows cost $800 each. The coffee table was $3,000. I didn't say anything. Thomas had left me comfortable, and if it made Madison happy, if it made James happy, what did it matter? "Mama Ruth," she'd said, squeezing my hand across the new coffee table, "you're so generous. James is so lucky to have a mom who understands that young couples need their space to grow." I'd smiled. I'd thought she meant emotional space. 2 months later, she asked about the kitchen. "It's just so dated, you know. I mean, I'm not criticizing. It was perfect for its time, but I've been getting so many brand partnership offers, and they all want kitchen content. This yellow tile is killing my aesthetic." Her aesthetic, in my kitchen, where I'd made Thomas's coffee every morning for 3 decades, where I'd taught James to crack eggs when he was 5, where I'd stood at the sink and watched the ambulance take my husband away for the last time. "How much would it cost?" I'd asked, my voice smaller than I'd intended. "Oh, don't worry about that," Madison had laughed, touching my arm with her perfectly manipulated hand. "James and I can handle the design and the contractors. We just need your approval. And maybe, only if you're comfortable. It would be amazing if you could contribute. Since it's your house and all, it'll increase the value tremendously." I'd contributed $40,000. I'd watched them rip out the yellow tile Thomas had laid himself, 1 square at a time, the summer before James was born. I'd watched them paint over the growth chart on the pantry door frame, the one that tracked James from age 2 to 18. I'd stood silent as Madison directed contractors to remove the window over the sink, my window, where I'd spent thousands of hours watching birds at the feeder, where morning light had painted golden squares on the counter. "It's gorgeous, Mama Ruth," Madison had gushed when it was done, filming herself doing a slow pan of the all-white, sterile space. "So clean, so modern. Don't you just love it?" I'd nodded. What else could I do? James stood behind her, his arm around her waist, looking at her instead of at me. The requests kept coming. Could she use my garage for her photography equipment? Of course. Could she turn the guest room into her office? Why not? I wasn't having guests anymore. Could I maybe try to keep the living room tidy? She was filming a lot more content from home, and my magazines and reading glasses kept appearing in her shots. I'd started staying in my bedroom more. It was easier than watching Madison rearrange 35 years of memories to fit her camera angles. Then came the baby announcement. I was overjoyed. My first grandchild. I'd gone to every doctor's appointment Madison would let me attend, had started knitting a blanket in soft yellow wool, had cleared out space in my closet for all the baby things I wanted to buy. "We need to talk," James had said one evening, and my heart had jumped. Talk. Thomas and I had always started good news with those words, but Madison's smile was tight, controlled. "Mama Ruth, we're so grateful for everything you've done. Really. But now, with the baby coming, we need to think about our family's future. Our family, not my family, theirs. James and I have been talking," Madison continued, "and we really need more space. A nursery, obviously, and a playroom. And honestly, a master suite that's actually, master-sized." I'd looked at James. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "What are you saying?" I'd asked. "We're saying maybe it's time for you to think about your next chapter," Madison had said, her voice syrupy with false compassion. "You're still young, Ruth. You could get a cute little condo, maybe closer to that book club you're always talking about. Downsize. Simplify. It would be so good for you." "This is my house," I'd whispered. "Well, technically," Madison had said, and I'd watched her exchange a glance with James. "It could be our house. If you wanted to transfer the deed to James, you'd still live here, obviously, just maybe in a smaller room. The basement is actually really spacious once you clear out all the storage. The basement. Or," Madison's voice had gone up an octave, "you could sell it to us. Way below market value, obviously, since we're family. We'd give you enough for a nice down payment on a condo. Think about it, Ruth. No more maintenance. No more yard work. No more worrying about property taxes." I'd looked at my son. Really looked at him. At 33, he was the image of his father Thomas's blue eyes, his broad shoulders, his gentle hands, but Thomas had never been gentle when it came to protecting his family. Thomas would have never stood silent while someone suggested his widowed mother live in the basement. "James," I'd said, "is this what you want?" He'd cleared his throat. "Mom, Madison has a point. This house is too big for you. You're here all alone, and we're cramped in our apartment. Then move in here," I'd interrupted. "All of you. There's plenty of room. That's what we're trying to do." Madison had laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "We want to move in, but you have to understand, Ruth. We can't raise a family in someone else's house. We need it to be ours. We need to make our own memories, our own traditions. You understand that, don't you?" I'd understood. I'd understood that my memories didn't matter, that my traditions were old and outdated, that I was old and outdated. "I need to think about it," I'd said. "Of course," Madison had beamed. "Take your time. Just maybe not too much time. The baby's coming in 4 months, and we'd really love to have the nursery painted and set up. I'm thinking a cloud mural on the ceiling, really whimsical and Instagram-worthy." I'd thought about it for 2 weeks. I'd walked through every room of my house, touching walls that held 35 years of life. I'd stood in the kitchen and remembered teaching James to make pancakes. I'd sat in the garden and remembered Thomas planting rose bushes for our 10th anniversary. I'd climbed the stairs, each one creaking in a familiar pattern, and remembered carrying James up to bed when he was small, his arms around my neck, his sleepy breath on my cheek. And I'd decided to give them the house, because I loved my son, because I wanted him to be happy, because I believed that family took care of family, and surely they would take care of me. I'd signed the deed transfer papers on a Tuesday. Madison had filmed it for her Instagram stories. Such a special moment. My mother-in-law is giving us her blessing and her beautiful home. Number, family first, number, blessed number. New chapter. I'd moved into the smallest bedroom, the one that had been James's room when he was little. Madison had already cleared out all his childhood things. The trophies, the posters, the glow in the dark stars on the ceiling. "Fresh start," she'd chirped. That's when things had really changed. "Ruth," Madison had said, "not Mama Ruth anymore. I'm having some influencer friends over tomorrow for a brunch. Do you think you could maybe stay upstairs? It's just that my followers don't really know I live with my mother-in-law, and it might mess with my brand. I'd stayed upstairs. I'd listened to laughter and champagne glasses clinking, and Madison saying, "No, it's just James and me. We love having all this space." A week later, "Ruth, could you maybe not use the kitchen before 9 a.m.? I need to film my morning routine, and I can't have someone else in the shots." I'd started keeping a mini fridge in my room, eating cereal in the space that used to be my son's childhood bedroom. "Ruth, would you mind terribly not parking in the driveway? It looks so cluttered with 3 cars. There's street parking right down the block." I'd parked on the street, 5 houses down, because that's where I could find a spot. "Ruth, I'm redoing your room, sorry, the guest room. You'll need to clear out by the weekend. We're thinking it would make a perfect nursery after all. You can move your things to the basement. We're putting in a daybed down there. Very cozy." I'd moved to the basement, my bedroom, my home, reduced to a corner of the basement with a daybed and a standing lamp. 3 months pregnant, Madison was glowing. Her Instagram following had doubled. She'd landed a partnership with a luxury baby brand. She filmed nursery setup videos in the room that had been mine, arranging tiny clothes and explaining her minimalist approach to baby gear. I'd brought her ginger tea when she had morning sickness. I'd assembled the crib while James was at work, my back aching, my hands remembering how I'd assembled James's crib in that very same room 33 years ago. "Thanks, Ruth," Madison had said, not looking up from her phone. "Oh, and heads up, we're having a gender reveal party next Saturday. It's going to be huge, like 50 people. Do you think you could maybe stay somewhere else for the weekend? My parents are coming, and I don't want things to feel crowded." My parents. The ones who were dead. She'd meant her father and stepmother, I'd realized. People who would be welcomed into my house while I was asked to leave. "It's my house," I'd said quietly. Madison had finally looked at me. "Actually, Ruth, it's not. Remember? You transferred the deed. This is James's and my house now. We're just letting you stay here because we're family." Letting me stay, in the house I'd owned for 35 years. In the home I'd built with my husband. I'd stayed at a budget motel that weekend. I'd scrolled through Madison's Instagram stories, the pink balloons, the champagne tower, the designer dessert table, all in my living room, all in my house that wasn't my house anymore. "It's a girl!" the video had squealed. James had kissed Madison while friends cheered around them. I'd watched it on a motel bed that smelled like industrial cleaner, and I'd cried until I had no tears left. When I'd returned on Sunday night, the house was trashed. Solo cups on every surface, pink confetti ground into the carpet, a wine stain on the couch that Thomas and I had picked out together in 1995. "Oh, Ruth," Madison had said, bouncing down the stairs in yoga pants and a sports bra, her small bump visible. "Perfect timing. Could you maybe clean up? The cleaning service I wanted to hire was super expensive, and James and I are trying to save money for the baby." I'd cleaned. I'd scrubbed my own floors, picked confetti out of my own carpets, wiped someone else's lipstick marks off my wine glasses. That night, lying on the daybed in the basement, I'd heard them above me. Madison's voice, bright and carrying. "Babe, we need to talk about your mom." My stomach had clenched. I'd held my breath. "What about her?" James had sounded tired. She's always here, always hovering, always underfoot. I can't film content without worrying she's going to wander into the frame." My followers are starting to ask questions. "She lives here, Mads. Does she have to, though?" A pause. "I mean, really? She signed over the house. We could sell it, buy something else, something that's really ours, get her set up in a senior community or something. She's 63, not 90. I know, but..." Madison's voice had dropped, but I could still hear. "She's making me stressed, James. And stress isn't good for the baby. Don't you want what's best for your daughter?" "Of course I do." "Then talk to her. Please, tell her we need space. Tell her she needs to start looking for somewhere else to live. I'd waited for James to defend me, to say that I was his mother, that I'd given them everything, that family didn't abandon family. But what I'd heard was, okay, I'll talk to her. I'd pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. The next morning, James had knocked on the basement door. I'd pretended to be asleep. The morning after that, Madison had done it herself. Ruth, we need to chat. She'd perched on the bottom step, manicured hand on her bump. This situation isn't working anymore. James and I have discussed it, and we think it's time for you to find your own place. I had my own place, I'd said. I gave it to you, and we're so grateful. But that was your choice. You can't hold it over us forever. I'm not. You are, though. Every time I suggest a change, you get this look, like I'm destroying your precious memories. But Ruth, those are your memories, not mine, not James's, and definitely not our daughter's. We need to make new memories, our own family traditions. I'm family too. Madison had smiled, but it hadn't reached her eyes. Of course you are. You're James's mom, and you'll always be welcome to visit. For holidays, birthdays, that kind of thing. We're not cutting you off. We're just establishing healthy boundaries. Where am I supposed to go? There are some really nice senior apartments across town. I looked them up. Very affordable. You'd have friends your own age. Activities. It would be so good for you, Ruth. You're too isolated here. Isolated. In my own home. In the basement to which they'd relegated me. I need time, I'd said. Sure, take a week or two. But Ruth? Madison had stood, smoothing her yoga pants. We're having a photo shoot here next Saturday. A big one, for the nursery reveal. I really need you not to be here. Can you stay with a friend? I didn't have friends anymore. Not really. The book club had drifted away when I'd canceled too many times because Madison needed babysitting for her dog, needed help assembling furniture, needed me to wait for package deliveries. My church group had stopped calling when I'd missed too many services because Madison scheduled her brunch parties for Sunday mornings and needed help setting up. I'd stayed at the same budget motel. I'd scrolled through more Instagram stories, Madison in the nursery I'd funded, touching tiny dresses, talking about her vision for motherhood and her perfect little family. Not once did she mention me. Not once did the camera pan to show any evidence that anyone else lived in that house. I'd come home Sunday night to find Madison in my kitchen. My old kitchen. The one I'd paid to renovate directing her photographer. A little to the left, she was saying. I want to catch the light on my bump just right. She'd been wearing one of Thomas's old shirts. My late husband's shirt. The blue flannel he'd worn every weekend for 20 years. The one I'd kept in my closet because it still smelled like him. Madison, I'd said, my voice shaking. That's Thomas's shirt. Oh, she'd looked down. Yeah, I found it in that box in the basement. It's perfect for the vintage pregnancy aesthetic I'm going for. You don't mind, right? I mean, it's not like he's using it. He's dead, I'd wanted to scream. He's dead and you're wearing him like a costume. But I'd said nothing. I'd walked past her, down to the basement, and I'd sat on that daybed and stared at the concrete wall. That's when I'd heard it, Madison, talking to someone on her phone. Her voice floating down through the vent. Girl, I know. She's still here, living in our basement like some kind of tragic spinster. A laugh. I'm trying to be nice about it, but honestly, she's bringing down the whole vibe of the house. Everything about her just screams old and depressing. The way she dresses, the way she shuffles around, those awful thick glasses, my glasses. The ones I needed because my eyes were bad, the ones that helped me see my grandchild when she was born. I literally can't have people over anymore without worrying she's going to appear and make everything awkward. Last week she came upstairs during a brand meeting wearing this ratty bathrobe. I died. I actually died. Another laugh. Madison was having fun. This was entertainment to her. James won't do anything about it. He's too guilty. But I told him either she goes or I'm going to lose my mind. And stress isn't good for the baby, you know? The baby, my granddaughter, being used as a weapon against me. I give it another month, Madison had said. Maybe less. I'm planning this amazing first birthday party for the baby next year, and there's no way I'm having it with his depressing mom lurking in the basement. Can you imagine the photos? No, she'll be gone by then. I'll make sure of it. I'd sat there for a long time. I'd thought about Thomas, about what he would say. I'd thought about the life we'd built, the dreams we'd had. We'd imagined growing old in this house, watching grandchildren play in the yard, hosting holidays, being surrounded by family. But this wasn't family. This was something else, something I didn't recognize. That night, I'd made a phone call, then another, then several more. Now, 5 days later, I was packing the last of my things. I could hear Madison and James upstairs, arguing about paint colors for the living room, my living room, Thomas's living room, the room where we'd brought James home from the hospital, where we'd celebrated 35 Christmases, where we'd held each other and cried when the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. Mom? James's voice again, closer now. He appeared at the top of the basement stairs. What are you doing? I zipped the suitcase, packing. Finally found a place? Finally. Like I'd been dragging my feet, like I'd been the problem. I did, I said. I'm leaving this afternoon. Oh. He'd looked relieved. That's great. Really great. Where? James? I interrupted. Do you remember when you were 7 and you broke my favorite vase, the crystal one my mother gave me? He'd blinked. What? You were playing baseball in the house. I'd told you not to. You broke it. Do you remember what happened? I don't. You cried, I said. You cried so hard because you knew how much it meant to me. And I held you and told you it was okay. That things could be replaced but you couldn't. That I loved you more than any object. James had shifted uncomfortably. Do you remember what you said to me? You were 7 years old, and you said, Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you 100 crystal vases. I'm going to take care of you forever. Mom, I don't want 100 vases, James. I never did. I just wanted you to remember that I'm a person, that I have feelings, that I matter. You do matter. Then why am I living in a basement? The words came out harder than I'd intended. Why am I being asked to leave my own home? Why is your wife wearing your dead father's shirt for Instagram content? James had paled. She what? The blue flannel. She found it in my things. She's using it for photos. I'll talk to her. No. I'd picked up my suitcase. You won't. Because you haven't talked to her about anything else. Not about the kitchen. Not about my bedroom. Not about being sent to motels during parties. You've stood by and watched her erase me from this house piece by piece. That's not fair. We needed the space. This was my space, James. Mine and your father's. We built this. We paid for this. We made this into a home. And I gave it to you because I loved you, because I wanted you to be happy, because I believed that family meant something. It does? Then why am I not part of your family anymore? I'd asked quietly. When did I stop counting? James hadn't answered. He'd looked at his shoes, the expensive sneakers Madison had bought him, the ones that cost more than the monthly payment on his first car. I'm leaving, I'd said. But before I go, there's something you should know. What? I met with a lawyer yesterday. Turns out, there's something called undue influence. It's when someone in a vulnerable position, say, a recent widow, is pressured into transferring property under duress. James's head had snapped up. What are you saying? I'm saying the deed transfer was invalid. Because I was coerced. Because I was emotionally manipulated. Because I wasn't in my right mind when I signed those papers. And there are emails and texts from Madison that prove it. You can't. I already did. The house is mine again. Legally. Officially. As of yesterday afternoon. I'd watched the color drain from his face. But we've invested so much. The renovations that you made me pay for? Yes, I kept all those receipts too. Where are we supposed to go? And there it was. The question he'd never asked about me. Where was I supposed to go when they'd banished me to the basement? Where was I supposed to go when they'd sent me to motels? Where was I supposed to go when they'd erased me from my own life? I don't know, James, I'd said. Maybe you could find a nice apartment, something that's really yours, where you can make your own memories and traditions. His face had crumpled. For a moment, he'd looked 7 again, realizing he'd broken something precious. Mom, please. Madison's pregnant. We can't. You have 30 days, I'd said. That's what the lawyer said was fair. 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Mom, I'll be staying with my friend Carol until you're gone. You remember Carol? From my book club. The one I stopped seeing because Madison always needed me for something. I'd picked up my suitcase and started up the stairs. James had grabbed my arm. Please, he'd said. We can work this out. We can all live here together. We'll figure it out. Now you want to figure it out? Now that you're losing something? It's not like that. It's exactly like that, James. When it was me losing things, my home, my space, my dignity, you didn't care. But now that you might lose something, suddenly we can work it out. I do care. I love you. I'd pulled my arm free. Then you should have acted like it. Madison had appeared at the top of the stairs, her phone in hand. What's going on? James, why do you look? She'd seen me, seen the suitcase. Her face had lit up. Oh, you're leaving. That's wonderful. I mean, that's great that you found a place. Where? Madison, I'd said, and something in my voice had made her smile falter. I'm not leaving. You are. What are you talking about? The house is mine again. The deed transfer was reversed. You have 30 days to vacate. I'd watched her face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, anger, calculation. You can't do that, she'd said. James, tell her she can't do that. She already did, James had said quietly. She talked to a lawyer. Then we'll get our own lawyer. We'll fight this. You gave us this house. You can't just take it back. Actually, I'd said, I can. And I am. You wanted me out of your lives? Congratulations. You got your wish. But you don't get to keep my house while you're at it. Madison's face had gone red. You bitter old woman. You're just jealous that we're happy, that we're young and in love and starting a family. I'm not jealous, I'd interrupted. I'm done. I'm done being treated like I don't matter. I'm done being hidden away. I'm done watching you play house with my actual house. I'm done. James! Madison had turned to him. Say something. Tell her. What do you want me to say? James had exploded. She's right, Madison. We pushed her out. We took everything from her. What did you expect would happen? I expect you to defend your wife, your pregnant wife. Or does your mother matter more than your own child? Don't, I'd said, my voice sharp. Don't you dare use that baby as a weapon. I love my granddaughter. I will always love her. But loving her doesn't mean letting you walk all over me. I'd pushed past them both, climbing the basement stairs for the last time, through the kitchen, my kitchen, no matter what color they'd painted it, through the living room where Thomas and I had slow danced on our anniversary, through the front door that I'd walked through as a young bride 35 years ago. James had followed me to my car. Mom, wait, please, let's talk about this. Let's figure something out. We could have figured something out before, I'd said, when I asked to stay upstairs, when I asked to park in my own driveway, when I asked to feel like part of the family. But you didn't want to figure it out then. I'm sorry, he'd whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Now that you're losing something, what can I do? How can I fix this? I'd looked at my son, my beautiful boy who'd somehow grown into a man I didn't recognize. You can learn from this, I'd said. You can learn that love isn't just about saying the words. It's about showing up. It's about defending the people who matter. It's about not letting the people you love be treated like they're disposable. You're not disposable. Then why did you dispose of me? I'd asked. Why did you let her push me further and further away until I was living in a basement? Why didn't you fight for me, James? He'd had no answer. There was no answer. I'd gotten in my car, the one I'd been parking 5 houses down so I wouldn't clutter the driveway, and I'd driven away. In my rearview mirror, I'd seen James standing in the front yard, his shoulders shaking. Madison had been on the porch, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling a lawyer, probably planning her next move. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I'm sitting in my house, my real house, the one I bought with the money from selling the family home, and I'm drinking coffee in my sunny kitchen. It's small, this house, a 2-bedroom cottage with a garden and a front porch. It's in a neighborhood where people know each other, where the book club meets every Thursday, where Carol lives 3 doors down. James calls every day. I don't always answer. When I do, he apologizes. He tells me Madison moved back in with her father. He tells me they're getting counseling. He tells me he understands now. He sees what happened. He wants to make it right. I tell him I hope he does. I hope he learns. I hope he becomes the man his father raised him to be. But I don't tell him he can come back. I don't tell him all is forgiven. Because it isn't. And I'm learning that that's okay. Yesterday, Carol and I planted tulips in my garden. Next month, the book club is meeting here. I've joined a pottery class at the community center. I'm learning to make things with my hands again, to create instead of just cleaning up other people's messes. I think about Madison sometimes, about whether she ever thinks of me. Probably not. I'm probably just a villain in her story, the mean mother-in-law who took away her dream house. But this is my story. And in my story, I'm not the villain. I'm not even the victim anymore. I'm just a woman who finally learned to value herself as much as she valued everyone else. James sent flowers last week. The card said, "I'm sorry for not seeing you." I put them in a vase, not crystal, just simple glass, and I set them on my kitchen windowsill. Every morning when I water them, I read that card. "I'm sorry for not seeing you." And I think, I see me now. Finally, after 63 years of making myself smaller, quieter, less important, I see myself, and that, I've learned, is worth more than any house.